When Shawnee Henderson revealed a bold new tattoo, the internet did a collective double-take. At first glance, it seemed like a personal style choice, but the story behind it runs much deeper. Was this just body art, or a powerful message directed at her past? The hints are subtle but telling. Shawnee, a seasoned TV executive, entrepreneur, and a name forever tied to basketball royalty, has never shied away from making a statement. But this time, it wasn't just the ink that got people talking, it was what it was covering that truly turned heads. What comes next might just change the way you see her. The tattoo itself, elegantly etched in black and gray, stretches across her shoulder and upper arm. It's a striking design, a phoenix rising from ashes, wings spread, eyes focused forward. For many, the phoenix is a symbol of rebirth, renewal, and strength in the face of adversity, and, if anyone has weathered public storms and come out stronger, it's Shawnee. Still, it wasn't just the symbolism that caught attention. It was the discreet cover-up of an older piece of ink, one that had once borne a name, closely linked to her previous life. Yes, the tattoo covered up a name. Not just any name, but the one that linked her forever to a high-profile marriage that played out in the spotlight. For years, Shawnee was known primarily as the former wife of NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal. Their relationship, while glamorous and often in the public eye, was not without its ups and downs. From reality TV to tabloid headlines, the world watched their union evolve and ultimately dissolve. But where many might have faded into the background or lived in the shadow of their ex, Shawnee carved a path of her own. In the years since the split, she's reinvented herself in almost every way. As the creator and executive producer of the Basketball Wives franchise, she's not only amplified the voices of women adjacent to the NBA lifestyle but has also redefined how the world views women in that space. She's launched businesses, philanthropic ventures, and maintained her image with poise and purpose. The tattoo, then, is less a rejection of the past and more a quiet declaration of evolution. It's about owning her narrative and reclaiming the space her body once gave to someone else. The online reactions were swift and impassioned. Some applauded her empowerment, calling it a power move and a fresh start. Others speculated about what the change might signal: new chapters, personal healing, or perhaps even new love. But for Shawnee, who hasn't directly commented on the deeper meaning behind the ink, the silence speaks volumes. She doesn't need to explain herself. The tattoo says enough. It's both armor and art. It's closure and a beginning. Friends close to her have hinted that this latest move is part of a broader personal transformation, one not just skin deep. Reports suggest she's recently taken time to focus more on inner peace, wellness, and purpose-driven work. Whether it's through retreats, spiritual growth, or time away from the glare of public attention, Shawnee seems to be writing a new chapter on her own terms. What this tattoo reveals isn't just an aesthetic update, it's a visual representation of a woman who refuses to be boxed in by the past. It's a reminder that growth sometimes requires erasing what no longer serves you, and that healing can be both painful and beautiful. In a culture where every celebrity decision is dissected, Shawnee's ink quietly, confidently, speaks volumes. And, perhaps that's the most powerful part of all. Not that she covered something up, but that she chose to replace it with something that so vividly represents resilience. Not an erasure of who she was, but a celebration of who she's becoming. But it wasn't just the bold new design that had everyone buzzing, it was what lay beneath it that truly ignited social media. The internet exploded with theories, subtle shade, and side eyes, all circling the same burning questions. Why now? And what exactly was she trying to erase, not just from her skin, but perhaps from her story? In today's deep dive, we're peeling back the layers from the surprising symbolism of the original tattoo to the deeper reasons behind its sudden disappearance. Is this a quiet act of closure? Or perhaps a veiled final jab aimed at someone from her past? Insiders are starting to talk, and what they're revealing adds a whole new twist to the tale. Was this about an ex, or is Shawnee communicating something far more profound without uttering a single word? The internet is in full detective mode, connecting dots, speculating wildly, and even uncovering supposed clues still faintly visible beneath the fresh ink. Celebrities are chiming in, fans are forming theories, and tattoo artists are dissecting every line and shadow. This is where things take an intriguing turn. Before she was the poised, empowered Shawnee Henderson reimagined, remarried, and running her own empire, she was Shawnee O'Neal, the chic, sharp-witted former wife of NBA icon Shaquille O'Neal. And like many who once believed in forever Shawnee had marked that love in the most permanent way possible, etched right into her skin, quite literally. Shawnee had once worn her love story on her skin. Those who followed her journey closely or know the deeper layers of her past might recall the tattoo she once proudly displayed, a symbol of her connection to Shaq. Though the full design was never fully revealed to the public, whispers and reports suggested it featured his initials, perhaps even their wedding date or a symbol marking their shared journey. But it wasn't just ink, it was a tribute to a chapter filled with very public love, a high-profile marriage, and the challenge of raising a blended family in the spotlight. For Shawnee, it wasn't simply a design. It was a memory carved into her, both beautiful and complicated. Behind the polished celebrity image, there was pain, and even Shaq later acknowledged it. In his memoir, he confessed to infidelity, writing, "I was a guy with too many options. I admit it. I messed up." Fast forward more than a decade, and Shawnee's life has transformed. She's remarried to Pastor Keon Henderson, fully embracing a life rooted in faith, self-worth, and empowerment. And yet, one trace of her former life remained, a tattoo, quietly resting on her skin like a fading shadow of a love long gone. Until now, covering it up isn't just about aesthetics, it's about healing. It's about reclaiming identity, finding peace, and finally letting go of a chapter that no longer defines her. Letting go of that tattoo meant more than covering old ink. It meant releasing a symbol that no longer reflected who Shawnee is today. Because here's the truth: while tattoos may physically fade, the emotions and memories behind them often linger like a quiet echo. This wasn't a simple cosmetic change. It was a bold declaration of growth and transformation. And the moment Shawnee shared a photo of her fresh ink, striking, layered, and impossible to ignore, the internet lit up. Fans zoomed in, pulled out side-by-side comparisons, and filled Reddit threads and Twitter timelines with speculation. What had been beneath that design? What message was she sending? And why now? The questions started swirling, and, trust me, the answers only get more fascinating from here. Just wait until you see what Shawnee's new tattoo actually looks like, because this isn't merely a design, it's a statement, maybe even a message. To her ex, to her followers, and perhaps most importantly, to herself. When Shawnee Henderson stepped out with bold new ink, gracing the exact spot where her past once lived, it wasn't some quiet tweak, it was a visual declaration of transformation. No dramatic caption, no press release. Just a sleek, striking photo, curated and confident. But longtime fans, they caught it instantly. The old tattoo was gone. In its place, something new, something fierce, intentional, and deeply symbolic. Gone were the whispered initials and subtle symbols that once connected her to a former chapter as Shawnee O'Neal. In their place now rests a stunning black and gray masterpiece, layered with meaning and clearly created with deep personal intent. So, what does this new tattoo actually depict? According to insiders, the design spans her lower back, centered around a blooming lotus flower emerging from dark, shadowy ink, an ancient emblem of rebirth, resilience, and spiritual awakening. Surrounding the petals are delicately rendered angel wings, their fine lines and ethereal detail interpreted by many as a symbol of liberation, inner peace, and a soul finally set free. But what truly has fans talking isn't just the design, it's the placement. Shawnee didn't erase the past by choosing a different spot. She reclaimed it. She transformed the very canvas that once carried a symbol of her former marriage into a testament to her personal evolution. That decision speaks volumes. And the timing, hardly a coincidence. This striking cover-up comes not long after her deeply spiritual wedding to Pastor Keon Henderson, a union grounded in healing, faith, and emotional renewal. Their ceremony wasn't just a celebration, it was a reflection of purpose. And this tattoo, it may very well be an extension of that same intentional journey, one of transformation, forgiveness, and stepping fully into who she's become. The message couldn't be clearer. Shawnee is no longer defined by who she was once married to. She's defined by the woman she's become. And social media didn't miss a beat. On Twitter, reactions flew in like wildfire. Shawnee got that new ink, like she's closing chapters and opening scrolls. That's grown woman energy. Another user wrote, "That cover-up ain't just a tattoo, that's a sermon." The symbolism struck a chord. Notice how she didn't erase it with lasers, one tweet read. She covered it with something stronger. That's a whole metaphor. Over on Instagram, the sentiment echoed. Under her post, comments flooded in. "That lotus flower says it all, rebirth. resilience, and stepping into divine purpose. Shawnee didn't just get new ink, she told a new story. Too many. The message was unmistakable: strength, renewal, and a clean slate. Shawnee is finally closing the SHOCKS chapter for good. New man, new mindset, new ink, say less. But not everyone was cheering her on. Some longtime fans of SHOCKS viewed the tattoo as a subtle jab, questioning whether the timing and symbolism were just a little too pointed. She's been remarried for a while, why now? One commenter asked. Feels shady to me. Others speculated that the ink might represent more than emotional closure, perhaps the residue of unresolved tension, still flickering beneath the surface of this otherwise empowering move. Now here's where things get even more layered. According to a well-known celebrity tattoo artist who chose to remain anonymous in an interview with a major outlet, covering an old tattoo is almost never just about aesthetics. It's deeply psychological, they explained. People choose to cover tattoos when they're finally ready to face what that ink meant to them. It's not just about removing a name, it's about releasing the emotion that came with it, and when someone replaces it with a symbol rich in meaning, that tells me they're turning pain into power. So the real question becomes, what is Shawnee truly communicating with this new piece of art? This bold, spiritual redesign may not come with a public statement from Shawnee, but honestly, it doesn't need one. The imagery speaks louder than words ever could. A lotus flower pushing through the mud. That's rebirth. Wings unfurling from its center. That's freedom. A new life rising from the ashes of the old. That's reinvention in its purest form. And for a woman who spent years being publicly defined as SHOCKS X, even while building her own empire, this tattoo may be the most powerful thing she's ever said without uttering a single word. But here's where it takes an unexpected twist. Some fans now claim they've spotted something hidden in the design. Some eagle-eyed fans claim they've seen something. Others missed faint outlines of the original tattoo still lurking beneath the fresh ink. Is it real? Was it intentional? Or just a trick of the lighting? When someone like Shawnee Henderson, a powerhouse mogul, television producer, and public figure known for making strategic, deliberate moves, chooses to cover a tattoo tied to her most public relationship, people pay close attention. But this unexpected twist has everyone doing double takes, screenshotting, and zooming in on high-res Instagram photos. Could it be that the past isn't fully erased after all? Some followers insist they can still make out the ghost of the original design, and that opens a whole new conversation. So what's really under that new ink? Is it just a trick of the lighting, a shadow caught at the perfect angle, or did Shawnee intentionally leave faint echoes of her past beneath the lotus and wings? Let's break it down. Within hours of her tattoo reveal, the internet went into full investigation mode. Reddit threads lit up, dissecting every pixel of the image. Twitter sleuths compared angles, filters, and contrast levels. The online chatter ranged from casual curiosity to full-blown conspiracy. Look closely under the lotus stem. One commenter noted, "There's a subtle curve that doesn't match the new design." Another added, "That might be part of the original tattoo peeking through." Suddenly, what seemed like a clean cover-up became a potential layered message. "She didn't laser at first," one user pointed out. "You can't fully mask darker ink without fading it a bit first." The theory bets definitely remnants of the old tattoo peeking through, and it's no accident. According to the speculation, Shawnee left it there on purpose, a quiet, symbolic choice. The message: the past is still a part of her story, but it no longer writes the narrative. TikTok, of course, jumped on the theory. Users flooded the platform with side-by-side comparisons, overlaying photos of Shawnee's back from before and after. One viral video, titled "Shawnee's Tattoo Decoded," racked up thousands of views, claiming the original ink included a specific date, possibly their wedding day, still faintly visible beneath the shading. While some of these theories might sound like wild guesses, they're not entirely far. In fact, they're grounded in something very real: the psychology behind tattoo cover-ups that don't completely erase the past. According to experts in both tattoo removal and emotional symbolism, leaving subtle remnants of an old design is more common and more meaningful than many realize. Dr. Fiona Westwood, a specialist in body language and symbolic expression, explains, "People often assume a cover-up is about starting over with a clean slate, but in some cases, individuals intentionally preserve faint traces, not to hold on to the pain, but to honor that it existed. It's a quiet, powerful form of emotional integration." She adds, "A completely clean erasure says this never happened, leaving a whisper of the past says, "It happened, but it no longer defines me." A full erasure says, "This never existed," but a partial cover-up that says, "It shaped me but it no longer defines me." And if that's what Shawnee intended, the message is powerful. She's not just erasing a name, she's evolving beyond it, while still honoring the journey that brought her here. It's a quiet act of growth, not denial. But not everyone's convinced by the symbolism. Some fans are calling it less intentional and more technical. They argue that those faint outlines might not be metaphorical at all, just the result of a rushed or imperfect cover-up. Tattooing over older, dark ink isn't always seamless, especially when you factor in time constraints, skin tone, and ink saturation. Even the best artists can struggle to fully mask deep set lines without extensive fading first. So was it a poetic gesture, or just a technical limitation? One professional tattoo artist weighed in on X, formerly Twitter, saying, "You can't cover everything perfectly unless you fade or laser it first. If the original design was bold, you'll always risk shadows creeping through after healing." In other words, if Shawnee didn't fade the old tattoo before going over it, some remnants were bound to peek through, intentional or not. Still, she's made no official comment, and in Shawnee's world, that silence speaks volumes. True to her polished, controlled public persona, she hasn't addressed the tattoo directly, no captions, no interviews, no explanations, just the ink, and the reaction it sparked. Clarification never came, but her silence only added fuel to the fire. Because when you're as image-conscious and immediate-savvy as Shawnee Henderson, nothing is accidental, especially not something as permanent as a tattoo. Every move, every detail, carries intention. Whether she aimed to send a message, spark curiosity, or quietly reclaim her own narrative, one thing's clear: she succeeded. And here's where it gets even deeper: this isn't a one-off. Fans who followed Shawnee for years are quick to point out a familiar pattern. This isn't the first time she's used subtle visual cues to mark emotional transitions. After her divorce from Shaq, the clues were always there if you knew where to look. After her split from Shaq, Shawnee began showing subtle shifts. Her wardrobe took on more neutral tones, structured silhouettes, and a sense of formality that echoed control and recalibration. Then, after marrying Pastor Keon Henderson, her style softened, flowing fabrics, spiritual undertones, warm gold hues changed quietly, suggesting rebirth, peace, and emotional evolution. So this tattoo, it's not just ink. It's another intentional layer in the ever-evolving Shawnee brand, a silent signal for those paying close enough attention. And yet, one question still hangs in the air. Was this really just about letting go of Shaq, or is there something deeper pulsing beneath the surface? At first glance, Shawnee Henderson's tattoo might just seem like a personal update. Look again, and it starts to feel like something far more profound. At first glance, it might look like just another celebrity rebrand, an aesthetic choice, a bit of body art with a story attached. But dig deeper, and it becomes clear: this isn't just about ink. It's about reclaiming control over her narrative, rewriting memories on her own terms, and sending a message, maybe even to those who still reduce her to Shaq's ex-wife, because the truth is, Shawnee isn't living in anyone's shadow anymore. After years of being defined by who she was married to, NBA legend Shaquille O'Neal, she's spent the last several years crafting an identity that's entirely her own. As the producer and visionary behind the Basketball Wives franchise, Shawnee took charge of the very narrative that once tried to box her in. She's no longer the supporting character in someone else's story, she's the writer, director, and CEO of her own life. So when she chose to cover up a tattoo tied to a former chapter, fans recognized it for what it was: not an act of bitterness, but a move rooted in alignment, in growth. Enter Pastor Keon Henderson. Shawnee's 2022 marriage to him wasn't just a new beginning in love, it was a deeply spiritual turning point. Even the ceremony reflected that shift: intentional, grounded, and filled with a sense of purpose. That marked a new kind of chapter for her life and legacy. The wedding was faith-centered gospel music, heartfelt vows, and imagery steeped in healing and rebirth. Shawnee herself publicly shared that, for the first time, she felt truly seen, protected, and respected. And that context matters, because when you're stepping into a chapter rooted in faith, restoration, and emotional safety, the remnants of the past can begin to feel like emotional clutter. That tattoo wasn't just a fading mark of an old relationship, was a symbol of the woman who had once compromised, endured, and carried the weight of someone else's empire, all while quietly building her own. Covering it up isn't just It's closure in the most permanent, unapologetic way. But it also speaks volumes to the world, especially to her critics. To those who've accused her of riding SHOCKS' coattails, the message is clear. I don't need a name to be relevant. I built this platform myself. And to anyone questioning the sincerity of her new marriage or her spiritual growth, she's saying without hesitation, this isn't a performance, it's evolution. Two women still living in the shadows of their former selves or past relationships. Shawnee is offering a quiet but powerful message. You can outgrow your past without erasing the journey that got you here. And let's be real, this isn't some PR stunt. Shawnee doesn't need to trend. She doesn't need a new man or fresh ink to stay relevant. She's not a 22-year-old influencer chasing likes. She's a 49-year-old woman making intentional, spiritual, and self-aware moves. Still, not everyone's convinced. In some corners of the internet, critics are calling it petty and unnecessary. Dig at the past. Some critics have dismissed the tattoo as a performative move, grab for visibility, even calling it disrespectful to the father of her children. But here's where that falls flat. Shaq has moved on, and so has she. He's acknowledged his past mistakes. He's dating, co-parenting, evolving, and if he's not shedding tears over a tattoo cover-up, why should anyone else? Because this wasn't about erasure, it was about evolution. From the mud of a complicated, broken marriage, Shawnee has risen like the lotus, inked on her back, centered, grounded, and fully bloomed. She's shed what no longer serves her. And with a new name, new ink, and a new life, she's not out to prove anything. She's just living unapologetically and fully.